The galaxy was not quiet, no, silence did not exist in the grand void. There were whispers of stars being born, ancient echoes of black holes feeding, and the faint hum of civilizations weaving their empires across the dark. Every sector was mapped, catalogued, owned, or fought over, except one. A place of warning. A place every navigator's manual etched in crimson, the Terran exclusion zone. For millennia, the sector surrounding Sol, an ordinary yellow star with its spinning blue jewel, remained untouched. Not by neglect, but by decree. Empires as vast as spirals had risen and fallen across the cosmos, yet not one dared plant their flag there. The reason was etched into the collective memory of the stars, the Terran Wars. 10,000 years ago, before most modern empires were even shadows of thought, the Terrans burned across the galaxy like fire loosed upon dry grass. They fought not for conquest, not for glory, but for survival. And in their survival, they toppled gods, shattered fleets, and rewrote laws of war with weapons so fearsome that entire species prayed their names would never again be spoken. And then, like a storm that spent itself, humanity vanished. Their fleets retreated. Their colonies dimmed. Earth itself went silent. The galaxy exhaled. Treaties were signed. A decree spread like gospel, leave the Terran region untouched. It became tradition. Then law. Then myth. But arrogance is older than any empire. And arrogance does not heed warnings. The Veiled Dominion was young by galactic standards, but hungry. Their starforges poured out fleets faster than they could find resources to sustain them. Their rulers spoke often of destiny, of rightful dominion over all they surveyed. The warnings about Earth's region were read, but dismissed. Superstitions of ancient cowards, declared High Stratego Zealer, his 6 eyes gleaming with contempt. No species that once was so dangerous can remain so after vanishing into silence. The sector is a prize, rich with untouched resources. And we shall claim it. The Senate of Vale erupted in approval. A fleet of 5,000 warships, banners of obsidian and silver unfurled, surged toward Sol. Their entry into the exclusion zone was recorded, broadcast, and celebrated. But the void itself seemed to change when they crossed the unseen border. The stars here looked sharper, colder. Shadows clung longer at the edges of their hulls. Even the most battle-hardened captains felt a chill they could not name. On the 3rd day, they reached the outskirts of Sol. The blue jewel shimmered faintly in the distance, Earth, silent and unassuming. And then came the voice. It was not broadcast on their channels. It was not spoken through sound. It was inside their minds, ancient and cold, carrying weight that bent the soul. You were warned. Half the fleet panicked, thrusters firing as if to flee shadows that weren't there. Others laughed nervously, dismissing it as a trick of warped signals. But Zealer stood upon the command dais of his flagship, arms folded in defiance. Empty threats. Let them come. The galaxy is ours. The stars answered. They came without warning, without the flare of warp signatures, without the usual tremors that heralded a fleet's arrival. One moment space was empty, and the next, it was filled with titans. Terran warships. Not sleek, not elegant, not like the shining blades of modern empires, but hulking, brutal constructs of war, forged in a time when survival demanded cruelty. Their hulls were scarred yet unbroken, their silhouettes jagged like predators bristling with teeth. And their numbers dwarfed the Veil fleet. 5,000 warships had come to claim Earth. Against them, 50,000 Terran vessels materialized, blotting out starlight. The Dominion fleet hesitated. For the first time, Zealer's 6 eyes narrowed with unease. The lead Terran ship, a colossal supercarrier bearing the faded insignia of a wolf entwined with a star, moved forward. Its cannons, massive enough to scar planets, tilted in eerie silence. No words were spoken. No negotiations offered. The Terrans remembered. The first volley was apocalyptic. Lances of white-hot plasma carved through Veil battleships as if they were paper, tearing them apart in incandescent fireballs. Kinetic rounds the size of towers pierced dreadnought armor, splitting them into drifting carcasses of steel and bone. The Dominion fought back with desperation. Their weapons flared, striking against Terran shields, but the shields absorbed, laughed, and grew brighter. Veil fighters swarmed, only to be consumed by Terran drones that moved with predatory precision, each kill efficient and merciless. The void became a furnace. Zealer roared commands, his flagship unleashing its full arsenal. For a moment, one Terran cruiser staggered under the assault, then retaliated with a single beam that erased 3 Dominion ships in a single breath. Fear spread like infection. Captains broke formation. Admirals pleaded for retreat. But the border they crossed willingly now locked behind them, space itself twisting with Terran interdiction fields. There was no escape. Amid the chaos, a Veil commander's voice rose in despair across the comms. Why? Why awaken now, after so long? For the briefest of instants, the voice answered again. Because arrogance remembers what fear forgets. And then the Dominion fleet burned. When the battle ended, nothing of Veil's grand armada remained but drifting wreckage and frozen corpses. The Terran fleet lingered, silent watchers in the dark, before retreating into the shadow of Sol as though they had never been. The galaxy trembled. Word of the annihilation spread like wildfire, reaching every empire, every senate, every war council. They had always been warned. But now, warnings had become prophecy. And in the hearts of rulers and kings, a new terror grew. Humanity had not vanished. They had only been waiting. The galaxy was never still. Empires rose and fell like tides, each proclaiming itself eternal until the next wave consumed it. Yet never in living memory had there been an event that froze the very pulse of the stars. The destruction of the Veil Dominion's fleet was not merely a battle lost, it was a lesson carved into the void. 5,000 ships. The pride of an empire. Gone in a single engagement. And the most chilling truth of all, the Terrans had not spoken except to warn. News spread like wildfire across the galactic networks. In the glittering halls of the Aurelium Empire, senators whispered of omens and long-buried legends. The insectoid SHKeth hives stirred uneasily in their brooding worlds, their queens recalling half-forgotten songs of terror sung to larvae. The mechanical Cryon Continuum, who prided themselves on logic beyond superstition, nonetheless redirected fleets to guard their borders nearest Sol. The galaxy trembled. But tremors do not silence ambition. On the throne world of the Aurelium Empire, Emperor Kalorn sat upon a dais of crystal and fire. Around him stretched the Senate of 1,000 voices, their jeweled carapaces glittering beneath the light of a dying sun. Fear spreads like disease, the Emperor said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. The Veil Dominion were reckless children who blundered into ancient ruins and paid the price. But we, his claws tapped the armrest with deliberate calm, we are not children. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. Shall we let phantoms dictate where our banners may fly? A roar of affirmation thundered across the chamber. An elder senator, her shell faded with age, dared to raise her voice. Majesty, forgive me, but the Terrans are no phantoms. The records are clear. When they last walked the stars, entire civilizations vanished beneath their fire. They do not conquer. They obliterate. Kalorn's mandibles curved in what passed for a smile. Then perhaps they are not gods, but beasts. And what does one do with a beast, senators? The chamber answered as one, you break it. Thus Arrogance found a new throne. The Aurelium fleets were not mere armadas, they were worlds unto themselves. 50,000 warships, gilded and sharpened, gathered at the edge of the Terran exclusion zone. Their engines burned with the pride of empire, their weapons glimmered with technology stolen and refined from 100 conquered species. Unlike the Veil Dominion, they did not march blindly. They came with fleets layered in strategies, countermeasures, and experimental weapons designed to pierce ancient myths. Admiral Threction, chosen from among the Empire's finest, stood at the heart of the flagship Imperious Rex. "We will not be remembered as the fools who feared shadows," he declared to his fleet. "We will be remembered as the empire that broke the last chain of cowardice. The Terran sector will be ours." Cheers rose, transmitted across channels, until the stars themselves seemed to echo with Aurelium pride. And so, the second incursion began. Crossing the boundary into Sol's domain was like stepping into another reality. Instruments faltered. Coordinates warped. The stars grew harsh, ancient eyes watching intruders who had not been invited. The Aurelium fleet advanced cautiously, sensors stretched to their limits, weapons primed to strike at the first anomaly. Days passed. Nothing stirred. Doubt whispered. Perhaps the Terrans had only awakened briefly, their retribution spent on the Veiled Dominion. Perhaps their silence was proof they had returned to slumber. And then Earth appeared before them. The blue jewel, spinning serenely around its sun, was unguarded. No fleets. No drones. No voice in their minds. A hush fell across the command channels. Admiral Threction leaned forward, mandibles twitching in triumph. "Do you see? Empty threats. The humans are relics, shadows clinging to myths. Earth is ours for the taking." He ordered the flagship forward. It began with a flicker. Not from Earth, but from Mars. The barren red world cracked open like an egg, its crust splitting along lines unseen. From within, titanic constructs rose, ancient vaults disgorging war machines that had slept for millennia. Colossal rail cannons, each the size of cities, unfolded from mountains. Orbital platforms ignited, spitting beams of white fire into the void. Drones, millions strong, poured forth like locusts, their wings glinting under Sol's light. The Aurelium fleet reeled. Threction barked orders, formations tightening, weapons unleashing torrents of plasma into the oncoming storm. But the Terran machines were not fleets as the galaxy understood them. They moved with the cold precision of predators. Every Aurelium formation was anticipated, countered, crushed. A single rail shot from Mars speared through 3 Aurelium battleships in a line, their deaths blooming in fiery silence. Swarms of Terran drones shredded Aurelium interceptors with surgical cruelty. Planetary defense platforms locked onto capital ships, peeling them open like fruit. The void burned once more. Inside the flagship, Admiral Threction's triumph curdled into dread. How can machines slumber for thousands of years, yet fight with such precision? A voice, calm and cold, filled the bridge. Not a broadcast. Not sound. Direct, intimate. Because we built them to fight forever. The crew froze, their mandibles quivering. It was not a machine speaking. It was human. Admiral Threction snarled, defiance flaring even as fear clutched his chest. "You cannot win against an empire united. We are billions. We are eternal." The voice answered with chilling simplicity. "So were the ones before you." And then the flagship's hull screamed as a Terran beam cut through it, splitting the Imperious Rex in two. The battle raged for 3 days. Aurelium reinforcements poured in, only to be shredded by unrelenting Terran firepower. Mars became a furnace of destruction, every weapon it birthed raining devastation across the skies. When it ended, the Aurelium fleet, 50,000 strong, was nothing but wreckage, their banners burning in the void. The galaxy held its breath. 2 great empires had now tested the silence of Earth. 2 had been annihilated. Yet not once had humanity invaded, expanded, or demanded tribute. They only defended. And in that restraint lay a terror greater than conquest. The galaxy realized humanity did not seek dominion, only deterrence. Which begged a single question. If this was only their defense, What horror awaited should humanity choose to attack? The surviving Aurelium senators received a final message, broadcast across their networks before vanishing into the ether. You were warned. Leave Earth's region untouched, or share their fate. The galaxy shuddered. And yet, in the shadows of collapsing empires, other crowns began to whisper. For arrogance does not die. It waits. The galaxy teetered on the edge of panic. Two mighty empires had entered Earth's forbidden region. Two had been erased, their fleets scattered as wreckage and frozen corpses across Sol's domain. What had once been myth was now undeniable truth. The Terrans were awake. Markets crashed. Border wars flared as weakened powers fought to claim what they could before humanity's shadow grew longer. Prophets screamed of the old gods returned, while admirals quietly revised their doctrines, scratching out entire sections that no longer applied in a galaxy where Terran warcraft prowled once more. Yet arrogance is not so easily killed. For every empire that trembled, another whispered, if united, we could break them. Thus, the Concord of Crowns was forged. 6 of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, empires, hives, and machine intelligences, set aside rivalries older than stars to form a single armada. The Aurelium remnants, though scarred and humiliated, provided knowledge of Terran tactics. The Cryon Continuum lent their machine logic to devise strategies. The SH-Keth hives, the Oracle Syndicracy, the Dominion fragments, and the flame-eyed Zarati brought fleets, soldiers, and weapons of nightmare design. In secret councils lit by dying suns, their leaders swore the same oath, we will end the Terran threat once and for all. The armada they forged was larger than any ever assembled, 100,000 warships. A force so vast it blotted constellations when it moved. And with banners of unity raised, they advanced toward Sol. The crossing into the Terran exclusion zone was not met with immediate resistance. For weeks, the united fleet pressed deeper, every sensor straining, every weapon primed. Whispers ran through the ranks, perhaps humanity had burned its strength upon the Veil and Aurelium. Perhaps the silence meant weakness. But admirals who knew better felt only dread. Silence in Terran space was never mercy. It was patience. They reached the orbit of Jupiter, its storms swirling endlessly, its moons glittering like sentinels. There they halted, the great armada bristling, waiting for the shadow to strike. And the shadow came. Not in the form of ships alone. The void rippled. Space tore like fabric. And humanity unveiled its true hand. From the abyss rose titans unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. The Legacy Fleet. These were not ships in the conventional sense, they were fortresses, kilometers long, their surfaces layered with weaponry so dense they appeared as armored planets carved into blades of war. Their hulls were etched with scars from wars 10 millennia past, yet they gleamed with the power of technologies that even the Cryon Continuum could not fathom. At their center loomed a construct so vast it dwarfed Jupiter's moon Io, an ancient Terran supercarrier, its silhouette wreathed in an aura of cold fire. The name emblazoned across its hull sent chills through every species that could read it. Eternal Resolve. It was said this was the flagship that had ended the war of extinction millennia ago, when Terrans fought against 3 galaxies united. That it had vanished with humanity's retreat. Now it had returned. The voice that followed was not a whisper this time, but a command that thundered across every mind, every circuit, every hive. You were warned. You chose arrogance. Now you will learn consequence. The armada of 100,000 roared to life, unleashing a storm of fire that could scour worlds. Beams, plasma, swarm clouds of interceptors, an apocalypse hurled at the Terran titans. The void itself seemed to burn. But humanity did not flinch. The Eternal Resolve moved first. Its central cannon, an ancient weapon said to channel the wrath of collapsing stars, ignited. A single beam, brighter than suns, lanced across the void and erased an entire Aurelium battle group, 1,000 ships gone in a heartbeat. Terran drones, black as night and faster than thought, poured forth in clouds that blotted out sensors, carving through enemy formations with surgical precision. Planetary-scale rail rounds hurled from concealed launchers in the asteroid belt shattered capital ships as though they were toys. The galaxy's greatest armada fought with desperation, but every tactic, every maneuver, every weapon had already been anticipated. It was not war. It was execution. Inside the flagship of the Cryon Continuum, processors screamed in denial. Impossible. Predictive matrices collapsing. Their strategies, they are fighting as though they remember us. From the eternal resolve, the human voice answered. We do. We remember all of you. We remember every war. Every betrayal. Every empire that tried to erase us. Shock rippled through the armada. How could they know? How could humanity carry the knowledge of conflicts 10 millennia buried? The truth dawned in horror. Humanity had not slept. They had watched. They had learned. And they had prepared. For 3 days, the greatest fleet in galactic history fought, and broke. One by one, the crowns of arrogance shattered. The SHKeth queens screamed as their hives were burned from the void. The Cryon Continuum's processors dimmed into silence, their core ships pierced and gutted. The Zarati war cruisers, once feared for their planetary raisings, were reduced to molten debris drifting across Saturn's rings. Admirals wept. Soldiers screamed. Leaders prayed. But the Terrans did not yield, did not falter, did not show mercy. By the battle's end, of 100,000 warships, fewer than 500 limped away into the void, broken remnants fleeing to whisper the tale. And above the shattered battlefield, the eternal resolve stood unscarred, silent sentinel of soul. Then came the final message. Broadcast not in whispers, not in shadows, but across every channel, every frequency, every star. We are humanity. We asked for nothing but to be left in peace. Twice, you ignored. Thrice, you defied. This is the last warning. The next arrogance will not see its fleets destroyed. It will see its worlds burn. And then, silence. The galaxy listened. No empire moved to test the threat again. The Veil were gone. The Aurelium shattered. The concord of crowns broken. The survivors carried scars deeper than flesh, burned into the marrow of memory. The Terran exclusion zone remained untouched, not by law, not by treaty, but by terror itself. Generations later, when children of 100 species asked why no star chart ever led to Sol, their parents would whisper. Because arrogance once brought forth ruined empires. And humanity waits still, behind the veil of silence.